It's quite an honour to be here tonight and be able to introduce three amazing keynote speakers. But first off, very honoured to actually be here in Kalgoorlie, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and ancestors and pay my respects to the continuing cultural, spiritual and religious practices of the Wongatha people and other First Nations associated with this land. As an Aboriginal person, it's very important to that, and I feel really honoured to have that opportunity not only to be welcomed here on country, but be able to meet many amazing people and be able to share stories and that with the mob that's here in this area. But without further ado, we're on a bit of a tight time frame tonight, so I'd like to introduce our first of our keynote speakers, Mella and Nindityo from Cemeti Art House, who are the co-founders of the Cemeti Art House in Indonesia. Since 1988, Cemeti Art House has been exhibiting and communicating the works of Indonesian, got blackfellas on the mind, and foreign contemporary artists with their unique approach to communications. Cemeti Art House has masters in stimulating art practices, conversations about art and art management. In 2010, Cemeti Art House launched a new platform, Reinventing Art and Society, emphasising alternative art practices that honour processes rather than promoting artists and art making. This builds on the strong practice of hosting cross-cultural artists in residence programs. Mella and Nindityo have valuable insights into how to make artists in residence programs effective and engaging, based on their experience of hosting multiple international and Indonesian artists every year. Cemeti Art House organises exhibitions, discussions and workshops. Additionally, they stimulate specific projects, connecting artists with other professionals and specific communities. Both Nindityo and Mella maintain strong and distinct international arts practices and present widely in exhibitions across Indonesia as well as the international art events. Please welcome Mella and Nindityo.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice welcome. Thank you very much, Ben Fox, Kate Fielding, and all the people from the Regional Art Summit for inviting us here. We are very pleased. Yesterday you already got an insight in one of the most interesting art collaboratories from Indonesia, which is Paper Moon Theatre. And this made us think, what is it that we can contribute to you, the Australian public, and relate to your issues in the arts? Talking about the attention for regional art practices, we are talking about the importance for the local. Interpreting and commenting on the local reality is the main inspiration and source of the greatest artworks from Indonesia. My name is Mella and I came from the Netherlands 30 years ago, in 1984, to continue my visual art study in Jakarta and Yogyakarta, after I graduated in the Netherlands. I not only learned about the Indonesian culture when I studied there, but learned more about myself actually, my background, and what I wanted to be as an artist. Becoming part of the Indonesian vibrant art developments challenged me to dig into the meaning of art and its different functions in the local scene without taking anything for granted. I met Nindityo at the Art Institute in Yogyakarta, and after he got the opportunity to study at the Rijksacademie in the Netherlands for 1 year, we decided to go back to Yogyakarta and start the artist initiative Cemeti Gallery in 1988, which is now called Cemeti Art House. Our art practice has the same importance for us as the work that we do through Cemeti. It is inseparable, connected with each other. Although we do our individual works and participate in exhibitions around the world, Cemeti is like one of our children and probably our most local embedded art piece. Last year, Cemeti Art House celebrated its 25th anniversary with several events called Turning Targets. These 25 years have brought us many diverse challenges and developments. Remember, in the time that we started in 1988, The term contemporary or contemporary art even did not exist yet, and there were no curators. We grew up together with the artists, art workers and curators, and at Cemeti we changed our tactics and targets as the time evolved. Formal institutions in Indonesia, like government-supported modern and contemporary art museums, for example, are absent. The decision makers and inventors in the art world are all from the private sector, like the artists, the independent curators, the art workers and also the collectors. The art in Indonesia seems to exist independently from the grand continuum of conventional art history, because art in Indonesia has not been formally institutionalized. As a result, art is diverse and comes in endless forms. The art scene is fluent and organic, especially in Yogyakarta or Jogja. Artists come from all over Indonesia to study, and after they graduate though, they do not go back to the areas or the other islands where they come from, because there is no infrastructure there. So everything is concentrated on Java, and then mostly in 3 cities only, Jakarta, Yogyakarta and Bandung. That is where the art institutions are, or in Bali as well. As a result, they stay and they create their own communities. Nowadays, Jogja has hundreds of diverse art communities, and the great thing is that they all collaborate with each other, and they are all fulfill different purposes, operate in different formats, filling gaps and have different ideologies. But with the lack of an unclear government policies, we are thrown back on our own. And what we want to develop starts from an urge or a need. When we started in 1988, also didn't want to be connected with the dictatorial government, so we had to be very flexible, alert and open to anticipate on the given circumstances. The changes brought along by each era and work with different artists and generations have also changed the focus of Cemeti over the years. So when we started in 1988, our goal was to create a space for artists to meet and exhibit their works. Visual arts have played a significant role in the national development of different Asian countries during the last decades. In Indonesia, the arts have contributed to public discourse on social, political and educational issues and have reflected on identity and democracy. With no government support, the way to survive was to stay low profile and try to sell works from our stockroom. Our exhibitions and projects were connected to the local public in a fast-changing society, while at the same time we brought information to the international artwork. I show you here images of an exhibition we did in 1997. It was called Slot in the Box. It was during the last election under Suharto, in which it was forbidden to be with more than 5 people in one room. And we decided to make a sort of instant action. In this we invited FX Harsono to do a performance. He did this performance on the Southern Square, it's close to our gallery in that time. It was very political, and also the works that we started to exhibit in Cemeti, they had all sort of political issues. In that time in the Suharto, it is also, we had to take care for the works that you were showing. But the artists, they were very clever of putting issues forward without being caught by the government. So this is a work by Agung Kurniawan. It shows the Suharto family, but you cannot show the real face of Suharto. So, but everybody knows he's talking about Suharto. So this is how the artists deal with the subjects. This is an artist, a young artist from Yogyakarta, Tony Valentero. He made this refrigerator with clothes for the new president to come. There's this art community in Yogyakarta called Taring Padi. And during the demonstrations in 1998 to get rid of Suharto, before he resigned, many artists walked through the streets. They were very brave to get rid of Suharto and changing the situation in Indonesia. So art had a very significant role. When Suharto fell in 1988, the era of reformasi or reform swept across the country. During this period, the art that emerged was often educational, community-based and liberating. A boom in critical and conceptual-based art prompted capacity building and initiatives and encouraged new perspectives on history. This gave new content to personal, local and global reflections. This period fostered diversity, critical thinking and experimental art, and artists generally felt linked to the larger social and political movements for change. At the same time, more and more young artists participated in international events. I just want to show you very few of my own work. So this is a work I did in 1998, 2 months after Suharto resigned. And when the stories came out, what happened during the demonstrations and especially the Chinese people who got killed during that period of time, I decided to make a cooking performance along the street, frying frog legs. Frog legs is a Chinese food, and the Chinese and Indonesian, they're often the black sheep or the black goat of the society. So when there's tension and chaos, it turns that towards the Chinese, and many got killed during the riots in 1998. So to open up a dialogue with the public, I served this Chinese food to the sort of Japanese audience, and all the chicken feet were fried or by foreigners, because we're also like a minority in the society. And by doing so, we try to open up the discussion about what happened the few weeks before. In that time, it was still very tense because, there were some riots going on, and not all of my, say, foreign friends dared to come with me to fry these frog legs along the street. This is a work I showed in the Asia Pacific Triennale in 1998 in Brisbane. So my first cloak was made out of frog skins, and I combined it with different other animal skins. So the idea that you have different perceptions toward different animals in different cultures. And I have different people wearing the clothes. I also had another food, so all the meat from inside the skins were also prepared, and people could cook them during the opening performance and eat them. So, for example, Aboriginals were cooking the kangaroo meat for the people who never tried it. The frog legs were fried by the Malay people and the Indonesian people, and were eaten by people who also never tried it before, to open up a dialogue. This APT has been very important, the Asia Pacific Triennale, in the 90s for especially the Southeast Asian artists. So I think it was one of the main important exhibitions in where we got connected and we started a network. So, for example, we got connected with artists from Manila or from Thailand, and we were all in the same sort of situation, trying to react on the political circumstances, because in the time it was still under the Suharto regime, and we started to be confident that this way of creating art was important. After that, we also started to make more exchange exhibitions. So we set up small networks, and the contacts that we had during those period of time was very valuable until now, actually. So in 1999, we moved to another venue, which was bigger, actually, because we could sell our work to the museum in Brisbane. With that money, we could build a bigger art space. And then we could have more exhibitions with curators and more group shows. Before, we had a very small exhibition space. So in the Reformation period, what was very important also, that the artists who were very political under the Suharto era, reflecting on Suharto as the enemy and the regime, suddenly fell in a sort of gap, and they were also, it became also a sort of trend to make political works. So they made, in that time, these artists who were already before working a lot with political teams, actually started more to reflect on the artist and started to criticize the artist and the hypocrisy of artists. because it's very easy to work in your studio and just hoping that things will change by itself. So they sort of started to make more educational projects and trying to change the society from within. This is work by Agus Awage. So what you see is also like self-portraits, also criticizing themselves. But other artists also try to make more community-based works, like this is work by Jaasna. He combined two of his passions, which is making etchings and playing soccer. So he made this interesting project in which he invited like 10 football clubs, soccer clubs, so they had to play in the field, and then he also created works around that which were exhibited in Cemeti. After 2002, many projects were also related to environmental issues. So starting to change the society or to be a part of the society, not only criticizing it. Going back to local materials. So this is working with architects. That's also what really happened, to work with interdisciplinary. Then we had young artists starting to create an art community in Jakarta called Ruang Rupa. And they really tried to react on the circumstances, especially in urban society. So here they created a big party, and they left the work like that, or the party like that, during 1 month. So we had all the maize coming out of the food and so on. But at the same time, there were still artists who were really reflecting on what had been happening in history. And that was also very interesting, how do you say, there were very interesting developments that artists looked back at history, because under the Suharto, it was almost impossible to dig up history or to criticize history or even question history. This is a group of artists from Bali, Clinic Taksu. And what they did is that they invited people to come into the space and to have fried cassava to eat. And all the audience, they really enjoyed eating the cassava. And then after that, they actually told us that this cassava is from an area where there was a masquerade grave in Bali, where many people got killed during '65, in the time where, what also Iwan and Ria told you yesterday, after the communist coup. We had more projects reflecting on Suharto. So this is Mulyono, who brought in a whole truck with villagers from East Java, which is like maybe 400 kilometers from Yogyakarta, to come into the space and to sing songs who were forbidden during the Suharto era. So it's all about revitalization and remembering, digging up the stories, healing. And at the same time, the young artists not really wanted to have all those heavy political issues. So they tried to look for different ways. This is a work by Tera. This is a work by Irwan Ahmed, who made a very interesting project. It's called Change Yourself. He asked people to come into the space and think how you can improve yourself and change yourself. And he created all of interparticipatory projects, like here you can see Ria cutting her hair. So it's related to what you can see here today in the hair salon. There were other young artist groups who tried to sort of get back the space into the walls in the space in the city, claiming back the public space, because all the space was sort of covered with the advertisements posters. So they created their own posters, went in the night into the city, and glued the posters over the commercial posters. So there was this whole battle going on in the middle of the night. Because the gluers of the advertisements came back to glue it over the artist posters. And then we did this project in 2006. We worked together with the Center of War Documentation in Amsterdam and together with the university in Yogyakarta. We worked together with researchers, and there were some researchers on what the change between 1930 and 1916. So during 3 regimes or 3 different changes in Indonesia. So under the colonial situation, and then the Japanese occupation, and the new era, the independence. So artists could pick up a research and reflect on that and make their own research and then create artworks. We created through the whole year, we made several exhibitions all related to the same theme. So this is another work by F.X. Harsono, cutting up pieces of generals who were killed in '65. Portraits of the generals, and were eaten by the public. So there's a lot with food. And another group of artists, we asked artists from different generations to work together and to reflect on history as well. And they created a museum. So they created a museum with the name of Museum Sukurodimedjo. Sukurodimedjo is a hero that they invented. So this hero lived through the several eras and survived. And you can see him on the wall drawings. They also brought in the grandson of this hero, who signed the placate. And then we had an earthquake in 2006, in which like 5,000 people got killed and 300,000 houses collapsed. We were asked to work together with the Ford Foundation and around 12 other NGOs in Yogyakarta to work in 5 villages on the south of Yogyakarta. So during 1 year, we worked on different, we gave different workshops to sort of revitalize the communities, to have joy in their life again. And this was actually, this photo series is actually the last parade that we did as a closing of the whole year working with them. This is work by Melati Suryadharma, one of the most important performance artists in Yogyakarta, in Indonesia. She lives in Solo. Starting in 2008, the Indonesian contemporary art scene experienced an unpredictable market boom. And during this period, Cemeti began its residency program to strengthen artistic processes and rethink art's relevance. The strength of the market acts as a lighthouse for the welfare of artists. It does not always provide adequate space for the development of the arts. This is a project I did. I went to Papua to collect some painter sheets. I was asked by the curators of the Jogja Biennale to work on the theme of neo-nation, so we go beyond borders. But I sort of criticized the curators, and by then I went to Papua to see if I could find any interesting artists to work with there, and to sort of reflect on the different areas in Indonesia, because if you talk about Indonesian art, it's still very much dominated by the Japanese. So I collected painting sheets from Papua. I brought them back to Yogyakarta, and I created. It's not working. I created fitting rooms, and on the opening night, I asked the Japanese men to come into the fitting rooms and try a penis sheet on. Some of them dare to do it. So I work with students who study in Yogyakarta from the area to help them to put the sheets on. And then there was like how do you say that? A thing to open it and to show it to the public. These are works which are made by artists from residence. Tintin Bulia, an artist who is based in Melbourne now, an Indonesian artist. I don't have the time to tell about his artwork, unfortunately. And I will give the time now to Nindityo. Please do.
Thank you, Mella. I also would like to first thank you to Kate Fielding and Ben Fox, who has brought me to this beautiful land, people, and its summit. In this very specific presentation, I also would like to underline that I'm here representing myself as an individual artist, dealing with local, regional, as well as international forums, instead of positioning myself as Indonesian artist or Indonesian Art Institute in international event. I would have acknowledged that my career as an artist living in Java, Indonesia, and dealing with some international art events and forums started when I first got chance to study and work 1 year as artist in residence in the State Academy of Fine Arts in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Although my intention was simply extending the longer chance to study and train myself as artist, practicing art within conventional terms of artistic practices. Aside from, I was of course also very keen to learn and understand more about the exotic cultural background of my girlfriend at the time, Jaasna, who has been rising up as an international artist with international reputation and acknowledgement, even more often categorized as one of those among a few suspected stars by art critics and curators as artists with heavily contained issues on cultural diaspora in Southeast Asia. A year spending time as artist participant of this post-academy in Amsterdam was very excited. For more than 4 months, yet I did not manage to start working in my studio. Instead, I was spending more time in paying much attention to galleries, museums, artist studios, artist running spaces, and performances. That was the time I learned lots of art. Being artist participant living in different social as well as cultural contexts, so much inspiration I thought will have to work out of my mind, though I also realized that it was not necessary to work it out immediately within my residency period in the Netherlands. My lovely mentors, Ger Latester, late exponent of Cobra movement in Europe, already passed away, and Marleen Dumas, a prominent Dutch painter, was born in Cape Town and moved to Holland in 1976. Also very generous in exploring ways in and understanding cultural diaspora through personal topics of eyes-to-eyes discussion in my studio. I realized that local art school in Jakarta I used to study had brought me straight away much training on artistic skills by repeating skills and or craftsmanship to fulfill artistic production that at a time should probably fit with the regime's big idea of cultural industry and tourism. Although the local craft industry in Jakarta has saved us from the economic crisis in late 90s, not enough facilitation in art schools, such as guiding students for bringing over the inner world, shaping each individual reason of being an artist, learning lots of how instead of why. An interesting part of short period of my artistic career that has put my position categorized as one of an international artist participant among other international artist participants, including the Dutch participants, was this post-academy in 1986, 1987, had been playing an important role for an entire melting pot of worldwide cultural networking in visual art. So many applicants coming from all over the world to apply this post-academic residency. State Academy of Fine Arts Amsterdam established as being focally intensive, implementing a political strategies of creative, innovative cultural diplomacies through visual art. General Stadium, or Studium General, was an important leading department that bridged individual artistic practices out of participant studios with all promotion ways for galleries and museums, as well as art actions in public space, such as participatory interactive art projects. The discussion on art's function towards a constructive social change was already on. Often remarked already that social language practices were extremely difficult to discuss within the conventional frameworks of art criticism. Jakarta Biennale 10 in 1993 was my snowball falling into the 90s gateway of internationalization. Just 3 years after the first Indonesian boom of painting that happened around 1991, soon after Jakarta Biennale 10, I was invited to participate in a group exhibition of 5 Indonesian and 5 Dutch contemporary artists, orientation in Jakarta and in Leiden. Asia Pacific Triennial 2nd, 1996 in Queensland Art Gallery, Australia, then again a group exhibition of a curatorial discourse brought up by Dr. Apinan Posyananda in Asia Society, New York. Havana Biennale in 1997, Cuba, followed by some other tour and residencies in Tokyo, Fukuoka, Cardiff, and so on. To be honest, internationalization was never been my intention to work as an artist. My work shown in international forums mostly curated by foreign curators, not to mention Indonesian local curators, often highlighting the very local tension between traditions and changes related to the context of social and political disasters in Indonesia. There was not even enough local curatorial initiatives that highlight potentials on internationalizing Indonesian contemporary art scene. Everybody was occupied by euphoria of reformation after regime's falls, indeed its status quo. For the second time, confrontation energy between localism and internationalism, democratization, as well as democracy, was very much disturbing and had been very helpful in strengthening perspective on my artistic practice. Questions unlike criticism often appeared particularly within the issues of localism in my work, such as how I should bridge local discourses within the contemporary art discourse in the world. Second significant piece of participating in international forums continued early in 2000. The second piece was a strong wave of internationalization brought into East Asia by many cultural institutions in the world, including Japan, Korea, and China. Events like biennial, triennial, residencies, seminars, and even more art fairs. Many more scholars, academics, researchers, curators, and followed by art dealers and art collectors were exploring the other side of this potential market in Southeast Asia. Indonesia in particular. Second big boom of this time for Indonesian contemporary artwork started to be recognized as market investment in 2007. Overwhelmed and exaggerated phenomena on the world's market for Indonesian art in some reasons has led me to deeply looking at the potential of local Indonesian public. It is an introspective warning for local public that brought me to enlightenment. I gradually changed way of practicing art, realizing that individual artistic practice is constantly offering your very defensive comfort zone that bring you to the reality of formalism, decontextualization, and depoliticization. Aesthetic become synonymous with the market and conservative cultural hierarchy. My practices in early 2000 shifted to show a lot of more confrontation of binaries ambigu, springing back and forwards from individual to collective, from author to spectator, being active to passive, even from real life and art. 2 art projects during international workshop and residency in Hong Kong and Tamsui, Taiwan, had definitely changed my perspective as being an artist towards art activists. Yet my work is not direct participatory social engagement, but it simply facilitates the emancipatory dialogues where communication is no longer monopolized by fetish art objects. I'm now practicing both directions, artists and art activists, both member of Indonesian Visual Art Archive and both member of Yogyakarta Biennial Foundation for Equator Biennial. The awareness on extremely confusing discussion between social engagement practices and conventional frameworks of art criticism makes me alert that I'm not a social worker. I am an artist, and doing art activism, I must feel free springing over each other. As I realized that we are running out of the time, I would only show some images of 2 projects showing my story. Actually, I just have some slides left. One project called International Sculpture Exhibition in Sonsbeek Park in Arnhem. You just go on with here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mella. And just as a token of the appreciation that you've shared your stories, your wisdom, here's a little
Thank you very much.
present.
Thank you.
And thank you.